public meeting open at 6:06 tonight. And as an introduction, explain the purpose of the Bayside Planning Panel. The Bayside Planning Panel is charged with considering planning proposals of any scale and value and determining development applications where the value is less than $30 million and where there is a potential conflict of interest, or it is a contentious development, or there are substantial departures from the development standards, or it is a sensitive development. Council itself no longer considers these types of developments. In particular, the panel must consider development applications that have attracted 10 or more unique objections in a public meeting. Others can be considered outside of a public meeting. All decisions are published on Council's website, normally within 10 days, hopefully with less than 10 days. Live streaming. This public meeting is being recorded and is live streamed to Council's YouTube page. The recording is an official record of Council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with Freedom of Information legislation, in brackets Government Information Public Access Act 2009. Applicants and members of the public that have registered to speak on an item will be asked to unmute their phone or computer, or in this case, the microphone, at the relevant time to address the panel and to answer any questions. Alternatively, members of the public may have registered for the meeting by making a written submission, which has been provided to all panel members. Once the panel has heard from the speakers, including applicants, we will make a decision during the public meeting or adjourn to consider our decision. As previously mentioned, all decisions of the panel will be published on the website. Let me introduce my colleagues on the panel tonight. Judith, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
My name's Judy Clark. I'm a town planner with over 35 years experience. I'm a member of this panel, other local panels. I'm a state appointed member of regional panels and a council appointed member of regional panels, and operate my own town planning consultancy as a sole trader.
And Katrina.
Good afternoon. I'm Katrina Blando, and I'm the local planning panel member for tonight. And I've lived in the area for quite a while, and I have a background in architecture.
Thank you, Katrina. And Anthony.
I'm Anthony Reid. I'm a chartered professional engineer. I've over 35 years experience as a director of engineering or a general manager in local government. I also am a member of other planning panels.
Anthony, thank you. My name is Ross Bonthorn. I'm an architect planner. I was formerly with the City of Sydney as an alderman when they had aldermen, and as a councillor, and then subsequently I was appointed to establish Pittwater Council and became a councillor with Pittwater. At the same time, I was the principal architect for the Lend-Lease group of companies for some 28 years. And then in more recent times, I've been working in projects, large-scale mixed-use projects at the conceptual and development stages in Australia, but predominantly in India and China and Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Let's move into the meeting. The first, acknowledgement of country. Bayside Council acknowledges the traditional custodians, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and pays respects to elders past, present and emerging. The people of the Eora Nation, their spirits and ancestors will always remain with our waterways and the land, our Mother Earth. Item 2, are there any apologies? I believe there are no apologies. Thank you. Item 3, disclosures of interest. I think we have all filled out forms indicating we have no conflicts of interest. No conflicts of interest, thank you. And that can be minuted. Item 4, minutes of previous meetings. The Bayside Local Planning Panel notes the minutes of the Bayside Local Planning Panel meeting held on the 22nd of August 2023 have been confirmed as a true record of the proceedings by the chairperson of that meeting. So that can be noted, please. Item 5, reports, planning proposals. We have none for tonight's meeting. Reports for public meetings. We have one item, 6.1, 145 to 570 Princess Highway, Rockdale. There's a development application. I have notification that there have been a number of written submissions which we have had circulated to us as members. And we have also a request from Mr. David Morocco to speak at the meeting, and he is actually attending the meeting. And Daniel, I think if you would like to at some stage come forward, it might be easier to talk into the microphone rather than to be in the back of the room. So if you'd like to come forward. The item is referred to in the report which has been made available, and the recommendation from the officer is for it to be refused. If you would like to address the panel, you have 3 minutes with a slight extension if you need to have a slight extension for a while, and then I'll open it up to panel members who may wish to ask questions of you or seek further information. So welcome to the panel, and welcome to the first meeting that I think for a long time we've actually had people come to the meeting, which is instead of being on screen, which quite frankly, I can see the smiles. I think we all sort of realise live is fine, but personal is best. So thank you for coming. So do you have any comments to make to the panel, please?
Yes, thank you for having me. With the development application, it was tough for us as a developer. We did 2 rounds of the design review panel. We thought the first round went well. We sort of took on board the comments that we should drop the height of the building, which we did. And in terms of process-wise, we went back for a second design review panel, which we sort of regret doing. It was a different sort of team or different panel, and it sort of seemed that the comments which we addressed were sort of brought up again, and we sort of got look at the minutes after the second design review panel were pretty intense and pretty harsh against the development. And it's a shame because it's a development to provide sort of low-cost housing for the area, which I think in this sort of day and age, and it's a bit of a topic at the moment that we should be providing low-cost housing for sort of affordability reasons. We feel like we've sort of did our best with the design. We're below the height. Our setbacks are in line with the neighbours. It's an infill development. We're sort of bound by either building to the north and to the south. We hit in terms of solar, we designed the building to be sort of against the building to the north, not to sort of affect our neighbours to the south in terms of solar. And it's just sort of been a tough process, and it has been a little difficult. So we really do want an approval. So it would be good to try and navigate a way towards that, because it's a project that we really believe in, and something that we want an approval and to get it built and get the project off the ground. So it's disappointing that it wasn't it wasn't sort of seen in a positive aspect. We understand that there was 2 4.6s that weren't submitted. That's our fault for other reasons why it couldn't be approved. But I guess hopefully today we can have a discussion about the project and really sort of determine what are the negatives, and us as the developer, along with our architect who's here, we can try and address those and push for an approval either through an appeal or 82A, or a negotiation somehow. I think that's it.
Thank you. Do any panel members have any questions for Daniel? Judy.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Have you had a chance to read the report?
Yes.
Okay, good. There's a lot of detail in it, obviously.
There's
for
a
you
lot.
to go away and
There's a lot of
digest.
negative detail. Yes.
Yeah. The report, do you understand the consequences of not having a clause, those clause 4.6s? Because the report says you were asked for them. Is there a reason that we're here tonight with saying we should have done it?
Yeah. So we had a bit of a disagreement with our town planner, who used to work at the council, who also represented at a project at 11 to 13, the Seven Ways, which recently got approved through a mod. I lost communication, but we thought up until a report that the 4.6s were in there. Evidently not. So yeah, that's on us.
Yeah.
They should have been submitted. And yeah, they're sort of, they should have been submitted and they should have been in there.
Okay.
That's on us, which is why
Yeah.
they weren't. We can submit them.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more question. There's a previous scheme for this site
Correct.
that had a basement.
Yes.
Is there a reason that you've not gone the basement path, so to speak?
Yeah, there is. So there was a previous approval for a 9-story boarding house, I think with 2 levels of basement. The applicant before us tried to get less basement as well. But at that time, there was a sort of pretty, there was a rule that you had to have 0.5 car spaces per room, and that was strict. Since then, it's been relaxed to 0.2, and then relaxed even again with, I guess, multiple other projects getting approved with 0 car spaces. So the project, which is right 100 meters away, right near the train station at 11 to 13, the Seven Ways got approved without any car spaces, on the basis that they're a tight constrained site, which ours is also. We partnered up, not officially, but I guess the long-term tenant of our proposed project was going to be UCO, who they're the biggest managers of co-living developments in the state. We spoke to them about car spaces, and they're like, "Look, we've done a survey on all of our tenants. I think they've got more than 6 or 7 projects successful up and running, and their information and their data was that their tenants don't use the car spaces. They're within 400, 500 meters of a train station. The whole point of doing these developments is to get people using public transport and cycling and taking the bus, and I guess that's the whole aspect around it. They gave us a letter of support noting that as well, and all of that, and also building 2 levels of basement on that site. It's not long. And it's, in terms of buildability wise, very, very difficult and very, very expensive. So it's not feasible as it stands to use that development application. If it was, save us a lot of time and hassle, and we'd use that. But yeah, it's simply not feasible to do so.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Judy. Are there any other questions or comments, Katrina?
I just wanted to say that I support social housing. We do need it in the area. That's my positive point. But I do think that it may be a little bit too dense for the site. That's it. Thank you.
I sympathise quite seriously, and I understand the difficulties. We all went to the site today and walked around and looked at the site and understand the adjoining interfaces and the difficulties that exist.
Yeah.
So I think saying that first, it is a very challenging site. And obviously you've been involved in understanding how it is, and your architect, because perhaps the residuals areas are difficult, particularly the way it faces Chapel Lane. And the fact that the width of the frontage to Chapel Lane is virtually the width of a car driveway as opposed to much else.
Yeah.
So I think we are all sympathetic to the notion of affordable housing in the typology that you're suggesting, and sympathetic towards the attempts that have been made. But the first thing is the fact that there is no 4.6, and technically we as a panel cannot make any judgment or approval of the application. I'm sorry, has something happened? Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So sorry. So, so technically, we are unable to even make a resolution, or that's, which is something which is probably a little curious in a sense that we just have no power to consider it. So therefore, the recommendation for refusal is something we may be obliged to fulfil. But we may make other comments which are of, in the report, comments which are of value to you in considering what you may then subsequently do with it. And the comments from the design review panel are things which I would suggest, though they may have differed and we weren't aware, or I was not aware, that there were slightly different panel members and things which happened at one meeting were different than another. But that's the way this system works. And it's not about to change in that sense. But the design review panel is there to literally review design. And so on that basis, their recommendations and their comments are something we take on board very seriously and have to be aware of. So in the recommendation from the officers, there's quite a lengthy exercise of explaining some of those things, which no doubt you've read. I guess my questions were similar to the questions that came from Judy, in that understanding the difficulties of a basement, but even so, perhaps that's now a little clearer, but the basement is something which not only provides parking, but it provides a series of other things that I'm sure you'd be aware of that functionally would be far better in a basement than on the ground floor, as had been identified by the planning panel. Design review panel. And I guess the only question I've got for you is that, knowing the difficulties, not so much with it on Princess Highway, but on Chapel Lane, did you ever contemplate or consider any discussion with the adjoining sites for access over their land? Or, I mean, when we stood there, that potentially some of the problems which you maybe are forced into having addressed, maybe by getting some form of access rights, not ownership, but access rights from the adjoining owners. And it may seem a slightly conceptual idea, but the fact there's a substation stuck in the middle of next door, or next to you, but in that area, I guess it may be, without getting into a design solution, worth contemplating how you could address the Chapel Lane frontage in a way that facilitates some of the comments that the design review panel and others are making.
Yeah, it's something to look into. It's very difficult to manage back there.
I guess we're trying to find things which, in addition to what's in the report, things which may overcome the linearity and the dimensional constraints which exist on the site, which are very challenging. I mean, your architect no doubt is fully aware of the difficulties that it has, as you would be. Because the usage I would support totally, particularly as you've indicated in the last couple of weeks or last couple of days, the notion of affordable housing and the notion of what it provides and what is required is something which in this area, and particularly, as you say, close to the station, is very worthwhile. So what I would, I guess, encourage is dialogue between yourself and the staff members in order to see how there is some solution which is other than the DA you have, which you know is financially not viable, but taking on board the comments from the design review panel, perhaps there is a way forward. I mean, we cannot do much more.
Yeah,
As I said, and I prefaced it with the fact that technically we are not able to even give an approval to it because of the 4.6s.
yeah.
And so the only observation, I guess, at a level I would make, and perhaps other members of the panel may comment on this, is that rather than just lodge a 4.6 now, you may look at and address some of the things which are in these documents, which allow you to then still perhaps have a 4.6, but address the problems.
Yeah, we'll need a 4.6 for both the minimum lot size and the height. I understand that. It's just if we're forced to put in a basement or two, we can't. There's no way forward for us. In terms of if we have to provide parking, which the tenant and the community indicated that they don't want or need, it's too tight, it's too hard, it's too difficult to try and get that in there for no benefit. So we'll try and work on something. We'll get the 4.6s in, which I think aren't. I can't see them being a huge issue. 800 square metre lot size. It's we're bound by two big buildings, and our lot size. So it's, I guess, from a community's perspective and council's perspective, we've tried to do the best of what we can with the site. If we can't, the previous applicant tried to make it work. They couldn't because they were forced to put in two basements. We've tried to make it work. If we can't get an approval, it's just going to stay as it stands, I guess, which I think would be disappointing for us, council, and the community. It doesn't really provide any benefit as it stands, and then it'll be seen to have two attempts at council, both without anything positive or feasible. So yeah, I guess that would be disappointing, but I guess it's a risk that we have to take. So.
Anthony, do you have any comment at all? Or
I acknowledge that the site is a difficult site. But the real issues are that the 4.6s, yes, they weren't forthcoming, but at the end of the day, the site and the overdevelopment of the site without parking is an issue. And furthermore, waste management of the site is a significant issue in my mind. Managing waste out of that development without facilities large enough to store the waste before collection.
In regards to like at the rear for additional parking, it could work if the density was decreased slightly to allow a further setback at the back, to allow not just for a loading zone, but potentially, because people do move in and out, people do sometimes take the work car home or whatever, to have like a token amount just to make it more usable for the people that are going to be living there. So maybe a light-on approach where you're actually considering that it does need parking would be in your benefit. Just a thought.
Yeah. It's going to have to be something that we look into. We did try our best, and I guess we were a little surprised just because there are such precedents of similar projects without any parking. the council's view on those projects were they're so constrained that they can't have any. And we're really constrained, but there's still a little bit of room. So then we have to do it. That's how I see it. So yeah, it is. If we could do it, we would have. Trust me. It's been a long time. I think we submitted it. Yeah. Back in May. Yeah. So it's frustrating, but it's something we'll try and work towards.
We can see lots of positives in it. So yeah, that you've dealt with solar access and that you've broken it down into two. So we can see a lot of effort that's been put in, and the articulation to the front, addressing your neighbours, the setbacks. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Daniel, I'm sorry, we can't do much more.
Okay.
I think you can sense there is a level of support in concept for what you are endeavouring to do, but it's with the limitations and the difficulties of the site. Not only is it a challenge, it's probably one of the more extraordinarily difficult tasks you'd ever take in a design exercise. And hence I was saying, I mean, we're not here to design buildings or design solutions, but I guess we try to offer options and conceptual thinking that may encourage a better answer to come. And so on that basis, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I hope, I wish you good luck. I mean, it's, and I know these sorts of meetings are not nice to have to sit through, but thank you for coming and being the first person that actually has sat with us for a long time, which is something which I guess for us is a much nicer thing to do than to be doing it over some form of technology stuff. So
Thank you.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
On that note, I declare the public meeting closed and it is 6:35. And I thank my panel members for being here today, and I thank the guests who came to address us, and also the staff for the good work that they've done in getting the report in the detail it has been. Thank you.